5,000 people decided you wanted to see more of me? That is unreal. Thank you. Now, I know what you want to see more of. Don't lie, I see you there. Let's rank some arcanes. I mean, there's only 119. Oh man. Well, here we go. This is how I will be ranking them. Magus Lockdown is obviously not as good as Arcane Energize, but running Magus Lockdown doesn't impede your ability to play Arcane Energize. They go into 2 different slots. That's how they can end up in the same tier. Maybe they will. We'll see. Speaking of ranks, S tier is the best of the best. I use them all the time, like 90% of the time. A tier is also great arcanes. These are my go-to arcanes if I cannot use one of my regular picks for one reason or the other. B tier is niche, meaning that it might be really good on 1 or 2 builds, but otherwise they are useless. If the build they're played on are, however, mega super ultra meta, I might upgrade it to A tier. C tier is just outright bad and not worth your time. D tier is useless in the sense that another arcane in the same slot does basically the same thing but better. Secondary Shiver. F tier is for arcanes that I just really despise with my entire being, and by the power of my soul I shall condemn them to the bottom of this fucking tier list. Let's rank some arcanes. First up, we have Arcane Acceleration, and it is not a bad start. Each critical hit gives you a 30% chance to get 90% fire rate for 9 seconds. So it's basically just 90% fire rate all the time. You get the same fire rate from Vial Acceleration, and if you run both Arcane Acceleration and Vial Acceleration, it only increases your DPS by 46%. Even if you go without Vial Acceleration, it is only 90% DPS increase, and when you factor in reload time, well. And on top of that, most incarnate weapons are, let's say, a little extra balanced, and those are all about using your ammo tactically. I think I have one meme build that actually uses this, but yeah, it's pretty mid. On the other hand, we have Arcane Aegis, and I went ahead and tested this again before passing my verdict, and oh boy, am I glad that I did. When you take damage, you have a merely 3% chance to trigger 12 seconds of 30% shield regen. And why is that so strong? Well, for that we need to talk about shields. Ignoring poison status effect, of course, you lose shield before you lose health. When you lose that last bit of shield, all damage to your health is negated for 0.3 seconds. That's called a shield gate. Normally shields will not charge for 4 seconds after being fully depleted. Arcane Aegis do not care. So picture this, you gain 1 shield, lose it, and then regen 1 shield before the shield gate can end. Meaning that, well, see if you can spot the moment Aegis triggers. Arcane Agility. When you take damage, you have a 60% chance to gain 60 parkour velocity. My main errand frames are Wukong and Titania. She scales with movement speed, and it's not like she needs any more. Same for Wukong, and he will not take damage most of the time anyways. There is some instances where I'm like, it would be kind of nice to have this, but at the same time, I'm not willing to part with whatever is currently in my arcane slot. I'd say it's a pretty fun meme, but you know, at least it's conceptually interesting for a meme build, unlike some of the other entries. Arcane Arachne. On Wallat, you gain 150 additive damage. It doesn't work on melee weapons, but do work on some of their projectiles. Now, why would you use this when other Warframe Arcanes add more weapon damage and Fury adds more melee damage? You wouldn't. This is our first useless entry. Arcane Avenger. When you take damage, you have a 21% chance to add 45% total critical chance. This means that if you have 20% modded critical chance and you trigger this arcane, then you will have 65%. So here's the thing. Certain Warframes need their arcanes for utility / survivability, and certain weapons already have red crits. And in these cases, this arcane is actually useless. But on the other hand, some weapons with low critical chance but high critical damage, such as the Kuva Nucor, for example. In these cases, this is my go-to arcane, and it is pretty much the only DPS arcane in the Warframe slot worth using. Well, I guess I kind of spoiled it there. Arcane Awakening. On reload, you have a 60% chance to gain 150 damage on secondaries for 24 seconds. This arcane, like many other weapon damage arcanes in the Warframe slot, suffers from being introduced before primary and secondary arcane slots existed. Let's think about it for a second. The weapon already has 100% damage on it. Then we add Merciless or Deadhead for 360% weapon damage. That is a total of 460%. So adding another 150% is only a 1.24 damage increase, or 24%, which is just not good enough, period. Arcane Barrier. Upon taking damage, you have a 6% chance to fully restore your shields with a 6-second cooldown. This arcane is legendary grade, so it's better be amazing, and it is really not. Just think about how easy it is to fully restore your shields anyways. There is a reason why shield gate spam is meta. As a matter of fact, I cannot for the life of me think of a reason why you would use this instead of Arcane Aegis. Yay, I hit a 6% chance and now I have full shields. And now it's all gone to a straight bullet. Cannot wait to have another 6% chance in 6 seconds. Get out of here. Arcane Blade Charger. When you get a kill with your primary weapon, you have a 30% chance to get 300% melee damage for 12 seconds. Obviously, the main con here is the micromanaging needed to make this arcane work. You have to pull out your primary weapon at least every 12 seconds and also make sure that you keep the arcane on your primary weapon stacked so it can kill. The pros are 300% melee damage. Now, how much is that actually? Assuming that you're using primed pressure point, even though you probably shouldn't, but I know you're all going to anyways. This adds a 2.13 times damage increase. Hot take here, melee weapons have started to fall behind. Not counting the mighty Glaive Prime, of course, but seriously, especially with the new incarnate weapons being introduced, primaries and secondaries are really starting to outcompete melee weapons, which also hurts this arcane in turn. With that being said, if you are playing a melee build and you don't need this arcane for survival, yes, of course you're going to be using this arcane. Arcane Blessing. Oh boy, here we go again. On health pickup, you get 24 health, stacking 50 times. So at 50 stacks, you'll have 1200 health. And before I get into the weeds, I've seen this awful take over and over again. Oh, this would be really good on Nesha, on Necros, or whoever. Just use the Panther Wolper Filer with Synced Deconstruct, and you'll get all the health orbs you'd ever want. But in either case, I don't think Arcane Blessing is very good, and I could talk about how much give a lot of health and health from levels and health armor relations, but instead I'm just gonna give you a clear example. You have 800 health, and enemies start one-shotting you at level 1000. Using Arcane Blessing brings you up to level 2000 before you start getting one-shot, roughly. Which sounds amazing, but that's the difference between staying in a survival for 2 hours and 45 minutes or staying for 3 hours flat. Since, say it with me now, enemy level scales exponentially, but you could always just equip in arrows and Arcane Blessing in the circuit and just be useless. Stop it, seriously. Arcane Bodyguard. Okay, we cannot spend that long on all of these. Let me channel my inner Ramsey. On 6 melee kills in 30 seconds, heal your companion for 900 health. Just use Gloom or a companion that doesn't need to be revived. You didn't need me to tell you that. I've used this arcane. Arcane Consequence. On headshot, gain 60% parkour velocity for 18 seconds. What a meme. Arcane Consequences? More like arcane crap. Volt, Titanian, Wukong can't even make use of this. Arcane Deflection. Ignore bleed status effect. Well, you're gonna be fighting Mutalisk Salad V? Well, then don't even bother with it, you donkey. Arcane Double Back. On darts, double jump and bullet jump get 25% damage reduction each on their own timer. Do you want to get scoliosis in your hand by putting in way more effort than what is required to have 100% damage reduction with shield gating? Oh, you do? Okay, then this is for you. Arcane Energize. Oi, Panini hit. Actually, hold on. On energy pickup, 60% chance to gain 150 more energy. God, that is insane. SSS plus. In high density environments, this will practically trigger off cooldown, which is roughly 60 seconds. Let's be realistic and say it generates 500 energy per minute. In a half-hour survival, it will produce 50,000 energy, and it's basically passive income. Arcane Eruption. On energy pickup, knock down enemies within 30 meters. This arcane sounds great on paper, but enemies in the process of getting up after being knocked down cannot be knocked down again. This is inconsistent as all hell, and either I don't need the crowd control or I depend on it, and I sure as all hell would not depend on this. Arcane Fury. On critical hit, gain 180% melee damage. So why use this instead of Arcane Blade Charger? Well, on warframes like Varuna or Kulero, who only empowers their melee weapons, this should be your arcane of choice, while generalist weapon platform frames like Chroma should use Arcane Blade Charger. They are reasonably balanced side grades. When taking damage, you have a 9% chance to heal for 6% of your maximum health every second for 6 seconds. At least, it's basically passive, but that has to be one of the most overrated arcanes in the game. Speaking solely of endgame builds here, since, well, hardly any serious warframe builds care about healing. From Magus Repair to Healing Strike to Gloom to Archon Shots, there are a million better ways to heal. Hell, just bring Nami solo. In practice, whenever I might have brought this, I end up using the next entry instead. Arcane Guardian. Now we're talking. What is 900 armor, am I right? No, I'm not right. 900 armor is pretty crazy. So every time you gain 300 armor, you add your actual health to your effective health pool. So at 500 health and 0 armor, you have 500 effective health. At 500 health and 900 armor, you have 2000 effective health, which is how much damage you must take to die. Some frames like Mesa just cannot build for armor with mods. Even with a full Umbra mod set, she only hits 365 armor. That's every day of the year, isn't it? So with shit-based armor, you're shit out of luck. Except you're not, because again we have Arcane Guardian. Only a small minority of warframes even hit plus 1000 armor modded. So on most frames, Arcane Guardian is at the very least going to be a doubling of your tankiness. Arcane Healing. Guaranteed immunity to radiation status effect. Just no. How often do you even encounter a radiation proc? I cannot for the life of me remember when a radiation proc actually caused a problem. Just watch your Brahma fire for a few seconds. Arcane Ice. Guaranteed immunity to heat procs. Just no. Okay, so obviously heat procs is more plentiful than radiation and more dangerous, but most of the time Arcane Guardian is more than half of your armor, and it works basically all the time, while this only benefits you when you take a heat proc. If you're worried about the damage over time effect of burning, then you're probably a pretty squishy frame and you're relying on shield gate abuse and rolling guard, at which point burning is no more dangerous than a stray bullet. Arcane Intention. For each active channeled ability, gain 250 flat health. I've already talked about this. It is categorically worse than Arcane Blessing. And I think that is all I need to say about this arcane. Arcane Momentum. On a critical hit, you have a 60% chance to gain 150% reload speed on snipers. Riveting and oddly specific. Snipers are not useful for general gameplay. This is a game about killing hordes, and snipers are single target weapons. Do you need it for Eidolon hunts? No, and I would also much rather just have the damage instead. Arcane Nullifier. 100% chance to ignore magnetic status effect. This one is A tier. Wait, hold on there, partner. You serious? Well, yes, I am. I am serious. I use this on my solo Eidolon Hunter. It is not interchangeable with any other arcane in that slot. It is borderline mandatory, and also I use it for my speed relic build on Titania because I don't want to deal with the trapped Grineer doors. Arcane Phantom. When you block, you have a 45% chance to gain 60% movement speed. I don't even want to talk about this arcane. You can use it on Vault, and you know what? I'm just gonna put it in B tier to make the one guy who do use this happy. Arcane Pistolier. On headshots with secondary specifically, you gain 100% ammo efficiency, meaning that your weapons don't consume ammo for 12 seconds. I also don't want to talk about this arcane, but here we go! I cannot imagine a scenario where I'd be willing to give up a Warframe arcane slot for weapon ammo efficiency. I can, but you never heard of the Piranha Prime being crazy meta, and that's because it isn't. Also, what really digs this into the ground is the fact that it doesn't work on Incarnon weapons in their incarnate mode, which are mostly really good. Arcane Precision. On headshot, gain 300% secondary damage. Okay, let's do some quick math. 100% on the weapon, 360% from secondary merciless or dead hit, and potentially 220% damage from Hornet Strike. Now, you're not supposed to run Hornet Strike like ever if you already have damage from your secondary arcane slot, but I tell you not to do it, and why, like all the calculations, and yet, well, some Texagon, great video, dude. You really showcased nicely why using Hornet Strike isn't worth it, but I really like using it cause I like it, especially when I'm playing Chroma. And I really love it when you leave these comments. Just makes me so exhilarated. Anyways, actual damage increase without Hornet Strike is 40%, and with Hornet Strike it's only 30%. Oh yikes. No thanks. Arcane Pulse. On health pickup, you have a 60% chance to restore 500 health to every teammate in a 30-meter radius. So this is like Arcane Energize's distant, horribly disfigured relative. I might consider using this as a meme build on like Nesha or Raruna or Celeste, Citrine as a sorta haha main healer funny joke, but most builds don't care about healing, and the ones which does are not meta. Also, it is on a 15-second cooldown. What a horrible arcane. Arcane Rage. On headshot, you have a 15% chance to gain 180% primary damage. 300% wasn't good enough, so 180 is certainly not. Arcane Reaper. Finally, something worth talking about. On melee kill, you gain 660 armor and 24 healing per second for 10 seconds. So, should you use this instead of Guardian? Okay, let's take a look at the spreadsheet. The first row is the modded armor on your build. The second row is how tanky you are in relation to your health. So, if you have 1200 health and 0 armor, that is 1200 times 1, which is 1200. If you have 300 armor, then you'd have 2400 effective health. The fourth and fifth row indicate how many times more tanky Arcane Guardian and Arcane Reaper makes you respectively in relation to how much armor you have already. And then the sixth row shows you how much of our effective health pool we lose by switching to Reaper from Guardian. Around 1000 armor, you lose about 10% tankiness in return for 25 healing per second. Keeping in mind that healing gets more valuable the more armor we have, 1000 seems to be a good breaking point. If you have 1000 armor, use Reaper, while having 1200 modded health, then you'll have 6640 effective health. That also means that you will heal for 37.5 effective health per second. With that being said, I still think that Arcane Guardian is generally, so in more cases, it ends up being useful, and so I can only give Reaper an A. Arcane Resistance. Ignoring toxic procs. If you rely on shield gating, then the only thing that can damage you through your shield gate abuse is poison, since it deals damage directly to the health. Am I biased? Yes, I am, because I don't like shield gate builds, but even then I can comfortably put it in B tier, since poison procs are predictable, mostly, and are not even possible in most missions. Plus, you have 1 second before it takes effect, which is roughly the duration of a fully charged shield gate anyways. So roll, operator, do whatever you have to do to save yourself. Arcane Rise. On reload, you have a 60% chance to get 150 damage on primary weapons for 24 seconds. Awful, right? No, actually, hold on. There is a particular environment in which base damage is very much so appreciated and where you cannot consistently trigger your primary arcane slot, and that's Eidolon hunts. I think you could make a very strong case for using this in aforementioned Eidolon hunts. Arcane Steadfast. On ability cast, you have a 20% chance for the next 3 abilities to consume no energy. That means that on average, 3 out of 8 abilities will have no cost. 3 divided by 8 is 0.375 or 37.5% more energy. Right, so to compare this to Arcane Energize, you have to spend roughly 1300 energy per minute at least to beat Energize in terms of energy economy, which you need to produce 812 of yourself, which you'd probably need Arcane Energize to do in the first place, ironically enough, or you'll have so much energy you don't need energy economy arcanes. On top of that, this ruins shield gate builds as they need to spend energy to replenish shield. It is at all means a poor man's option. However, Energize is so expensive, prohibitively expensive, and this is not. So if you don't have Arcane Energize, then yeah, sure, at all means, use this. Arcane Strike. When you hit an enemy with a melee attack, you have a 15% chance to get 60% melee attack speed for 18 seconds. For the most part, you'd rather want to use Arcane Fury for the damage. It is almost impossible to fit both of them on a build without deliberately making the build worse, that is. On a build with a lot of base damage from abilities, so just Chroma really, you might want to use this. But look, I've played a lot of Chroma, and for whatever it's worth, I would not use this. Arcane Tanker. When equipping an arc gun, you gain 1200 armor for 60 seconds. 1200 is greater than 900, so this must be better than Arcane Guardian. But it is so fucking annoying to use. I would never use this except in the Prophet Taker fight, which, to be fair, it is extremely nice to have in that specific fight. But still, maybe if arc guns weren't such an unbridled meh. Arcane Tempo. When you get a critical hit, you have a 15% chance to get 90% fire rate on shotguns for 12 seconds. And honestly, just no. Arcane Trickery. When performing a finisher, you have a 15% chance to become invisible. Now, I would dunk on this, but this might actually be Colero's saving grace. Just equip a rapier and red crit guaranteed bleed front finisher to victory. Arcane Ultimatum. When performing a finisher, gain 1200 armor for 45 seconds. This arcane sucks. If you're going for finishers, then use Arcane Trickery. However, I do use this on my Mesa Mother Token farming build. I do use this, but if I have to be a little real here, this arcane sucks. Arcane Velocity. On critical hit, you have a 90% chance to get 120% fire rate on secondaries. Why not 100% chance? Anyways, you have to be careful with fire rate when it comes to incarnate weapons, which makes up the majority of top tier secondaries at this point. You might want to use this on Mesa, since he ramps up a lot faster when using this, however. Arcane Warmth. Ignore cold procs. Right. 100% chance to not take the least harmful status effect in the game. That ought to be worth Hexa Quintuple S tier. Also, F tier is a failing grade, and now I refuse to waste any more breaths on this. Okay, let's just pretend like I know Therium Arcanes. I do not. And let's move on to Mold Arcanes, which can be purchased from Mrs. Multiverse Nonsense herself, Archimedean Yonta on the Saramon. They all go on your Warframe. Mold Augmented. Gain ability strength when you kill an enemy, stacking up to 250 times, which will add 60% ability strength. So basically just 60 ability strength, but only in endless missions, which is basically the only missions we care about in that regard anyways. This is the same as getting a second, better Transient Fortitude and without the drawback. This arcane fixes so many builds which needs ability strength but cannot fit it in with mods alone. It makes certain builds possible in conjunction with Archon shards. I mean, we now get another 100% ability strength. The most noteworthy example I can think of is 400% ability strength Baruch, so you can strip 100% armor with pellets. I use this all the time. Mold Efficiency. While you have shields, gain 6% ability duration every second, stacking up to 36%. This arcane works really well with invisibility frames for obvious reasons, and it works well with teams that include Revenant for inexplicable, mysterious reasons. However, would I use this on, say, Octavia? No, the other one. Hell no, I would use Mold Augmented any day before Mold Efficiency. I would maybe consider using this on Ashe, but I'm not even too, well, willing to do that. Mold Reconstruct. When you spend energy, heal all allies for 6 times that amount. Haha, funny arcane is good for haha funny meme build, but that's about it. You could slap this on Nidus and just have him heal everyone constantly with his 1 as he gets energy back when hitting enemies, but that's still a joke. A really funny joke I might do someday, but that doesn't make a good arcane. I'm still giving it a B because it makes me go haha funny. Mold Vigor. After casting an operator ability, your next Warframe ability has 45% more ability strength. So this is just a worse Mold Augmented in every way, almost. Obviously in endless missions, this is just worse. 45% is in fact less than 60, and you know, will this consistently be worthwhile in quick missions? No, it will not. But at least in Eidolon hunts, you are basically guaranteed to have cast an operator ability before your next Warframe ability, and so it is just 45% ability strength. Would I use this? Hell no. And that is all she wrote. Now moving on to Magus Arcanes, which are acquired from Uko and Little Duck on Cetus and Fortuna respectively. Some of these are really good and absolutely worth using, and some of them is really not that, so I might not have too much to say about some of these. Magus Vigor. 600 additional health for your operator. 600 health is basically nothing on the steel path, and in Eidolon hunts, you would rather want to use utility arcanes, but we'll get to that in a minute. Magus Husk. 300 additional armor for your operator. When you look at EHP, effective health pool, Magus Husk and Magus Vigor ends up having roughly the same effectiveness. Of course, they have compounding effect if you use both of them together, but as you will see, there are Magus Arcanes that are so powerful that you'd absolutely want to use those instead. Magus Cadence. When using your Void Sling, you get 90% sprint speed, which would be haha funny if it worked on Warframes as well, but it doesn't. So after using one of your movement abilities, your other worst movement ability, Running, becomes better but still worse than Void Sling, or using your Warframe or doing literally anything else than just running around in operator mode. This arcane has no reason for existing. Magus Cloud. When you enter Void mode, your Void Sling abilities have 300% more range. This is basically only used with Protective Sling, and while it is pretty effective, it is much less effective than just crouching in the corner the entire time. It is, however, a very effective way to develop scoliosis in your hands. Magus Replenish. When you Void Sling, you heal for 30% of your health, operator only. Yes, the heal is nice for Eidolon hunts especially, but I'd rather heal my Warframe instead. Magus Elevate. When you enter your Warframe, you have a 95% chance to heal it for 300 health, which 300 doesn't sound like much, but on my Ivara Eidolon Hunter that is enough, almost all of my health, and unlike Magus Repair, it heals me right away. Okay, hey there, we have an intermission. Sorry to distract you from the rest of the video, however, I said that the radius of whatever this arcane is called was 25 meters. It's not. I have Magus Cloud on, which means that the radius is 4 times larger than it otherwise would be. Can't even hit this guy. Ridiculous. Still can't hit him. Still cannot hit him. Yeah, that's how close you have to be. And also, does that look like 80% of the maximum health? I mean, all I can say is that this arcane just actually doesn't work. But yeah, back to the video. Magus Overload. When you Void Sling, you stun robotic enemies in a 25-meter radius for 3 seconds, after which they discharge, dealing 80% of their maximum health to all enemies within those 25 meters. This arcane sounds incredible, but it has a few drawbacks. If an enemy is killed by another enemy, they will not discharge. And also, this is a very slow way to play the game. Let's not forget that Warframe is pissing easy and the corpus is at the bottom of the barrel. You can just shoot them. Magus Glitz. You don't have transference static when you die as Operator. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where this was needed. You would think that it would be useful, but I've carefully paid attention to how often having transference static actually leads to me going down, and it's pretty close to 0% of the time. After you use Void Sling, the subsequent use of Void Sling within 3 seconds will return you to your original position at no energy cost. This was once used for island hunts, but that level of complexity in hunting does not exist anymore. Magus Firewall. While in Void mode, you generate Void particles every 1 second, and you can generate up to 6 particles, each granting 12.5% damage reduction. Taking damage consumes a particle. This is way too fucking slow. Magus Drive. When you enter your Warframe, you get 150% K-Drive speed. I mean, if you're gonna do the K-Drive races for some reason, then you really should use this. Magus Lockdown. When you Void Sling, you stun up to 10 enemies within 15 meters for 4 seconds, and you can have up to 2 tethers at once. First up, this is pretty damn good crowd control. Not as a Warframe ability, but as an arcane on your Operator, it's nice pocket crowd control. But furthermore, it works on Demolist, Acolytes, and yes, even Eidolons if you cast it before they regain shield, preventing them from using all of their annoying shit. Magus Destruct. When you Void Sling, you reduce the enemy's puncture resistance by 65%. Magus Anomaly. When you enter your Warframe, you pull enemies within 30 meters toward you. Combine this with another grouping ability like Ensnare, and now you have control over the entire map, or at least a good setup for your heavy attack builds. Magus Melt. When you Void Sling, you increase your Operator's heat damage with 30%, stacking 7 times. This is purely an Operator DPS arcane, and other arcanes does it much better. Magus Accelerant. When you Void Sling, enemies loses all hope for humanity. I mean, they lose 65% damage reduction to heat damage. I'm the one losing hope for humanity. Magus Repair. While in Void mode, you heal all Warframes with 25% of their maximum health every second. This is such a nice pocket heal. What's that? You taking some trickle damage? No problem. What's that? You're playing a health tanking build and you took an unexpectedly large amount of damage? No problem. Your teammates in the circuit have no idea how to build tanky? No problem. Magus Aggress. When you quick transfer back to your Warframe with a melee attack, your next 4 attacks with heavy blades deal 350 more critical damage. This has a 20-second cooldown. Without the cooldown, this would be a funny build, but as it is just a haha, not that funny. Now moving on to Emergence Arcanes, which are farmed from the Ceremon and also equipped on your Operator. Emergence Dissipate. When you Void Sling, you can attack to detonate your Void Sling indicator instead of dashing. Enemies within 10 meters will spawn a small spark that restores 10 energy, so like a small energy orb. This arcane is so fucking annoying. When you pick up energy as the Operator, it's supposed to also replenish the energy of your Warframe, but most of the time it just doesn't. People were raving about this arcane when it was released, myself included, but having now actually used it, screw this arcane. Arcane Energize all the way. Emergence Renewed. When you fully deplete your energy, you will regenerate energy 3 times faster for 5 seconds. Oh, so many problems with this. You don't want to fully deplete your energy, ever except on operators when Eidolon hunting, but you don't need energy right thereafter anyways. What is 5 seconds of faster energy regen gonna do for you? It's like 50 energy with generic. You don't fix your energy economy by having shit energy economy and then adding a safeguard. That does nothing. Also, it has a 30-second cooldown. Emergence Survivor. When you take lethal damage, you instead gain 60% of your maximum health with a 90-second cooldown. I would use this on most of my builds if it worked on Warframes, but it doesn't. So this really reads, when your operator takes fatal damage, prevent transference static, but only heal to 60% instead of 100 on your operator. Garbage. That was a short section. Regardless, we swiftly move on to Exodia Arcanes, which are farmed from Cetus and goes on SARS, which is modular melee weapons also farmed from Cetus. Exodia Brave. When you kill with a heavy attack, you regenerate 5 energy every second for 4 seconds. This can stack 3 times. You refresh the timer when you gain a new stack, but you cannot refresh it anymore after reaching 3 stacks and must thusly let it fully deplete before you can start stacking it again. You know, in the late game this is obviously a steaming pile of crap, but if you're willing to fork over 50 platinum and about 10k endo, I have a build which will carry you through the entire steel chart. The entire star chart, goddammit. Exodia Force. When you deal a status effect, you deal 200% of the weapon damage to enemies 50% of the time. Sounds good, but it has a million pitfalls. It cannot crit, it does not work with condition overload, it only deals melee damage, so no elemental damage, and also, you will never pick this over Exodia Contagion. Exodia Hunt. Slam attacks now has a 50% chance to pull enemies toward you. Honestly, just use Magazine normally. Exodia Might. After performing a finisher, you have 30% more lifesteal. Who cares? Healing isn't even on the radar in the current meta. You have to stop to perform the finisher, slowing down your DPS a lot. It only works 50% of the time, and there are so many better sources of healing. Hell, my Brave Tsar build has plenty of healing. Exodia Triumph. Melee attacks now have a 50% chance to generate 1 additional combo counter. Okay, would you rather have 1 more combo counter half of the time or just have a pocket nuke? And yes, I know it's annoying that I'm comparing everything to Exodia Contagion, but it is that good. Exodia Valor. Melee attacks on lifted enemies generate 3 combo counter. But wouldn't you rather have a pocket nuke? Exodia Contagion. Finally, air attacks after double jumping or bullet jumping will produce a projectile which gains damage the longer it travels, up to 400% at 13 meters. And the damage on this thing is out of this world. Damage cap has been reached with this arcane several times, and even after the nerf it has amazing synergy with Breach Surge. So the Wikipedia is actually lying about this arcane. It says that it applies 1 viral proc, but do you see a viral proc? Because I don't. And also it says that it travels outward as a wave, but actually travels outward in a unidirectional cone, which means that it basically hits nothing. It's just a worse knock-up than a heavy attack. Completely useless. Okay, that's that. Next is the Pax Arcanes, which are farmed from Fortuna and goes on your kit guns. That's part of the reason. Kit guns were all the rave back when they were released, however power creep is real and rampant in Warframe currently. Meanwhile, kit guns haven't seen much love. And I know, but Spore Lancer. How about this? I don't think Spore Lancer is that good. I think you're using it as a clutch to justify horrible builds, which otherwise cannot overcome Acolytes. Fuck me, half the time I don't even notice the Acolytes spawning. Just use a proper build, how about that? But why does it matter? We are rating the arcanes, not the weapons, right? Well, in order to use these arcanes, you must equip a kit gun instead of, let's say, one of the super powerful Incarnon secondaries. And if the Pax Arcanes are less powerful than the gap between the strongest kit gun and the secondary you had to unequip, it's a failing grade. And so they all get a failing grade. And honestly, they're all kind of awful, maybe except for Pax Seeker. it looks good, but you know, it has some problems. It has a lot of problems actually. The projectiles get stuck in the walls. It only works with your slash and puncture damage. It does not crit. It does not work with elemental damage. It cannot chain off itself. It's just awful all around. Or maybe not awful, but it's certainly not good. These kit guns, they remain a relic of the past. Also, I'm skipping over the Boils Arcanes. You can tell me how OP they are in the comments. We're in the end game now, or it's more like we're in Infinity War, but we're getting there in this 6-hour-long video. Actually, I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I'm on my 27th page here. If I'd known how much effort this would take, I would never have done it. Anyways, Virtuous Arcanes, they're farmed from Cetus and Fortuna, and is equipped on your amp. And let's not pretend like amps are actually used for anything other than Island Hunts and the overcooked chicken on Jupiter. Virtuous. Okay. Virtuous Null. When you get a kill, you'll regen 20% faster amp energy for 4 seconds. How worthless is that? You should be able to blast the shields off the Eidolon in one charge. Virtuous. How do you pronounce this?
Virtuous.
Virtuous Tempo. When you get a... God damn it. Virtuous Tempo. When you get a kill, gain 60% attack speed on your amp. Can you guarantee that you'll get a kill within 8 seconds of needing to blast the Eidolon shields? No. Are there other arcanes that flat out gives more DPS? Yes. Is there any reason to use this? Absolutely not. Virtuous Fury. On status effect, you have a 20% chance to gain 30% damage for 4 seconds. If only I could get 60% damage instead and have a much easier condition to trigger it. Virtuous Shadow. When you land a headshot, you have a 40% chance to gain 60% multiplicative critical chance on your amp, of course. This actually used to be meta. Like, I'm talking capital M-E-T-A. Most effective tactic available, but now there is simply a better option for DPS. Fail. Virtuous Ghost. When you land a headshot, you have a 40% chance to gain 60% status. If there's something I don't want, it's status on my amp. G for Ghost. Virtuous Trojan. Convert 98% of your damage into viral. You could use this as the world's worst primer if you so desired. Virtuous Surge. You convert 98% of your damage into electric damage. Never mind. This is the worst primer ever. Virtuous Spike. Convert 98% of your damage into puncture. Oh, it just keeps getting worse. Virtuous Food. Convert 98% of your damage into heat damage. I would say that this is mildly better than the previous 2 entries, but that would be me giving this arcane any credit, and I refuse. We also have a few more arcanes for our amp called Eternal Arcanes, which are farmed from the Saruman. They were introduced much later than the Virtuous Arcanes, and it shows. Eternal Eradicate. On ability cast, gain 60% damage on your amp. That's exactly what I was hoping would exist earlier. What a coincidence! But seriously, this arcane rocks. I use it exclusively when I'm Eidolon hunting. Eternal Logistics. After you Void Sling, your amp has a 72 ammo efficiency. If the Eidolon still has shields after you deplete your amp energy, then you're doing something wrong. Eternal Onslaught. Upon depleting your energy, that's your operator energy by the way, gain 180 critical chance on your amp. Holy cow, that is a lot of critical chance. That's all of it basically. Yeah, this is my other arcane, amp arcane, for hunting, obviously. Now we're in the end game. Let's talk primary arcanes, and for this we will have to do some calculations. Primary Deadhead. On headshot kill, gain 120 weapon damage for 24 seconds, stacking 3 times for a total of 360 damage. Each of these stacks decays 1 at a time. At max rank, it also adds 300% headshot multiplier and 50% less weapon recoil. Assuming you are hitting headshots, that is a 486% damage increase. Primary Dexterity. On melee kill, you will receive 60% damage on your primary weapon. Stacks last 20 seconds, decays one at a time, and can stack up to 6 times, which, you guessed it, is 360%. This arcane is mostly used for utility, since it also grants 7.5 seconds of combo duration at max rank, but might also be used when you DPS with your melee weapon, but occasionally need to kill with your primary, such as, for example, with melee charger. Primary Accelerate. Upon inflicting an impact status effect with your primary, you will receive 1.2 energy regen per second for 10 seconds. Stacks up to 3 times. I guess if you don't want to use the amazing primer Decido, which cannot inflict impact status, you could use this instead. Primary Merciless. Upon getting a kill, you will receive 30% more damage on your primaries. It stacks 12 times, and that is 360 like the other original primary arcanes. Stacks the case one at a time, but only lasts for 4 seconds. Another OG, still super OP after the ammo nerfs, though slightly outcompeted by primary Deadhead these days. It also grants 30% reload speed. And by the way, when I say it's outcompeted by Deadhead, what I mean is that you would more often want to use Deadhead, but obviously you use them on different builds. For example, if you have a build that is predominantly status based, you would not want to use Deadhead, as it would be difficult to get the killing blow as a headshot, for example. Primary Frostbite. Upon inflicting a cold status effect, gain 3 critical damage and 2.25 multi-shot. Stacks 40 times, lasts 12 seconds, and decays all at once. At 40 stacks, you will have 120% critical damage and 90% multi-shot, which is the same as Vital Sense and 40% of Galvanized Chamber, which is obviously not as good as 3 Serration. Now, I do use this arcane. You see, Chroma already gets base damage from his Vex armor, and it just so happens that his strongest element with Elemental Ward deals cold damage, and also the epithet just so happens to force cold procs when quick fired. So when playing Chroma with the epithet and a primary weapon with high critical chance, this is actually the correct choice. Now, if I have to be a bit objective and honest, Chroma bad, but I enjoy playing him. All in all, however, primary Frostbite not that good. Primary Obstruct. When you inflict a magnetic status effect, jam enemy weapons in a 15-meter radius. 10-second cooldown. I don't see what jamming enemy weapons in a 15-meter radius is supposed to do at any level of play. Primary Plated Rounds. Increase your weapon damage when you reload, depending on how much you've depleted your magazine before reloading. At 116 missing bullets, you'll get 360%. This buff only lasts 10 seconds, so you'll need a weapon with 200-ish magazine, a really high fire rate, and you can never let go of the trigger. Also, this does nothing for Incarnate weapons. Fractalized Reset. On ability cast, gain 240% reload speed. So the thing is, you only get the benefit of reloading faster when you are reloading. So even if you're reloading half the time, then you're only getting half of the benefit of reload speed. So in this case, that would be 120%, which is still much less than the 360% you get in terms of pure damage when using something like Merciless. So what I'm saying is, it's not worth being able to shoot the gun twice as often if you lose 3/4 of your damage. Longbow Sharpshot. Hey, looks like I get to use this clip a 3rd time. How useful is Longbow Sharpshot, or rather, is it better than Deadhead? I mean, it's legendary grade, so it has to be, right? Well, Longbow Sharpshot offers plus 300% damage on next shot after landing a headshot. Deadhead offers 120% damage for 24 seconds on headshots, stacking up to 3 times. The timers expire one at a time. 120% times 3 is 360%, which is in fact more than 300%, in case you were wondering. Furthermore, Deadhead has a 30% headshot multiplier at max rank. Assuming that you hit exclusively headshot, that is a 468% increase. So that's it, right? Case closed. Well, no. You see, Deadhead is additive, while Sharpshot is multiplicative. Let's say that we have a Paris Prime with Serration and each of these arcanes respectively. This is what that would look like. Now, let's try and add heavy caliber to the mix. And by the way, don't actually do this. Anyways, as you can see, the Longbow Sharpshot is starting to look more enticing. By the way, I know it says primary, but this can only be played on bows, so don't get any ideas. Anyways, best case scenario, you would play this on Chroma, who gets 900% damage from his Vex armor. These 900% stacks additively. At this point, Longbow Sharpshot deals 2.8 times more damage, making it the superior choice, well, assuming that you keep hitting headshots. Shotgun Vendetta. When you kill an enemy within 5 meters, you'll get 180 multi-shot and 75% reload speed for 15 seconds. So reload speed I just talked about, and the multi-shot is still less than Galvanized Chamber. DPS wise, this makes no sense, but when it comes to Archon Huns, you have to take damage attenuation into account. Basically, the more damage you deal to the Archon, the more damage reduction it has. It's so dumb. Anyways, multi-shot doesn't count towards this damage reduction. And since we are using the Kuva Heck anyways, which empties and then reloads right away, this is perfect. It's niche, but it's not that niche, since I'm sure that everyone who has access to Archon Hunts do them every week. And the final category, secondary arcanes. Let me start in the middle with Cascadia Flare. On heat status effect, gain 12% damage. It stacks 40 times, that is 460 damage. You don't have to kill anything, and it's just more pure damage. Wonderful. Also, you don't have to deal the heat status proc with your primary, just any heat status proc. And like that, I'm going to rank Deadhead as S tier, Dexterity and Merciless as A tier. Secondary Encumber. When you apply a status effect on an enemy, you have a 24% chance to apply another random status effect. So, if you have a secondary weapon as a primer, meaning that its sole focus is to apply status effect for stuff like, I don't know, Condition Overload, you will be using this. Is it a primer? Okay, then you will be using this. This arcane doesn't even have any competition. Secondary Kinship. For each ally affected by your buffs, gain 20% critical chance on your secondaries. So realistically, you will affect 4 allies, that is 3 teammates and your companion, with 2 buffs max. So the 20% times 8, that's 116 critical chance. That is not worth giving up the 360 base damage for. In a perfect world, Octavia could have 7 active buffs on 4 different teammates using the helmet system, but realistically, no. Secondary Shiver. You have 45% more additive damage against targets for each cold status effect they have on them. Now, I could talk about how 8 cold stacks is equal to 360% more additive damage, and how it could never be better than Merciless or Deadhead, but I've already done that. Instead, I'm gonna give it an F for terrible. This thing is additive on some weapons and multiplicative on others, and multiplicative on different weapons with different coefficients that has nothing to do with the percentage that's stated on the arcane. It is not reasonable that I'll have to manually test over 100 weapons to know how one fucking arcane works. Forget it, I don't wanna know. Cascadia Accuracy. After you roll, you have 300% more critical chance for 4 seconds on secondaries. If you play a frame like Chroma or Octavia, who has a lot of additive damage from their abilities, then use this unless you already have red crits, of course, or, close to it. Cascadia Empower. When you apply a status effect, deal 700 damage off that damage type to that enemy. This is just terrible. It's not 700 damage and then that and that and that and the other. It's just 750 damage, no crit, no multiplier, nothing. I mean, except for Warframe abilities. This doesn't even work with the Kuva New Core. I don't mean functionally, the arcane works as intended, but the Kuva New Core would be the ideal weapon for this, and it does not make sense to use Cascadia Empower instead of like Flare or Merciless or Deadhead. Cascadia Overcharge. While you have shields, gain 300% critical chance. Okay, never mind. Use this on Octavia. Conjunction Voltage. On electric status effect, gain 1.5 reload speed and 3 multi-shot, stacks up to 40 times, lasts 12 seconds and loses all stacks at once. That is 120 multi-shot and 60 reload speed. Now, you might think that this is the worst version we've seen of this type of arcane so far, and that's because it was the first in this series of shit. And that is actually all of them. I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this. It almost killed me putting it together. Alright. Finally made it through that behemoth of a video. But guess what? YouTube doesn't pay me a dime. So if you want to support me, you could always pick up my fantasy novel, fantasy novel at a massive discount for the next 4 weeks. Okay, thank you so much in advance. I'll see you in the next video, which most certainly will not be an hour long. That I promise.